What's up? It's Ryan. I'm testing out my old DV tape camera. We're going to see how this looks and check out some footage today.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for being here with me, Ryan. Another video, and today I'm talking about camcorders. Specifically, this one is the PV GS120 by Panasonic. It came out in January of 2005, and I recently shot an entire video on this camera. Like, not about this camera. I used this camera to shoot the whole thing. I vlogged, I shot B-roll, all sorts of stuff, and it shoots on mini DV tapes, and the tape failed. I got the intro a while ago, and then the rest of it was just garbage. And I guess that's one of the downsides of shooting on tape. I was disappointed, but I do have some conclusions, some ideas, some thoughts just from shooting on this camcorder again. This was my camcorder. I had it a long time ago, and my friends and I used to shoot short films and comedies and just silly stuff on this camera. And I forgot how much I loved the camera. Not necessarily the image. The image quality was definitely a shortcoming of the camera. And obviously, shooting on tape is a shortcoming because the tape can get caught up in the gears. In fact, I lost a couple camcorders back in the day. The tape gets wound around some of the heads. It gets ruined. That didn't happen this time, but for whatever reason, maybe because it's an old tape or maybe just because it's shooting on tape, it didn't work right, and it's all scrambled and no good. However, there were some things I loved about shooting on this camera that I completely forgot about. First of all, this is a 3 CCD camera, charged coupled device. A lot of cameras had a single CCD. These had 3. That was a big deal. It split the colors into different channels, and I'm not a scientist, but it made the image quality better. Everyone was all about the 3 CCD cameras back in the day. I've got a little lens hood on this, a 37 millimeter lens hood. I just added that when I was younger. I thought that was cool, and just left it on there. But some awesome things about this camera. One, it's got a flip out screen and an EVF, which is amazing. The screen also rotates completely around so you can film yourself. So some of the things that were already on this almost 20-year-old camcorder, people now are like, oh, thank you, Sony, for putting it on, on my vlogging camera. That stuff already existed. Another thing that is crazy is this camera has a mode, and I'll show it up close, cinematic mode, where like the new Sony mirrorless cameras, you could turn on cinematic mode and it automatically puts black bars on the top and bottom of the screen. And this camera had it way back in 2005, which is crazy. I forgot how many features were amazing from this camera. This camera also, kind of like a Blackmagic cinema camera, takes stills, which is obviously not the main reason to get this camera or get a Blackmagic camera, which we're shooting on now. But to have that feature there as reference photos, just to snag a quick still, super cool. And they had it on this. It's even got a flip out SD card that stored the photos, the still photos, the 1.2 megapixel photos. They're not great, but they're there. And that's really cool too. Another feature of this camera is it featured a Leica lens. It actually doesn't even say the speed of the lens, and I don't know that offhand. It is not fast. You cannot get great bokeh, but it's there. It's got a Leica lens, so I guess Panasonic's relationship with Leica goes back quite a while. Another great feature of these old cameras is you didn't have to use, you had to use a specific type of battery, but you didn't have to use a specific size. I've got a bigger one on it now. There's a smaller one that you can swap in, but you could use different size batteries, which was really cool for different recording lengths. And has threaded filter. I've got a UV filter on and a lens hood. And just some of these features are unbelievable. The cinematic mode, and there's actually different picture profiles. There's the flippy screen. It's really unbelievable. All this stuff came around 20 years later, and people were happy to have it, but really, we were happy to have it back because it was already on some of these old camcorders. Also, the form factor of this camera, I absolutely love holding it. The old strap on the hand, shoot the videos. It's very family video, dad video type thing, but it's super nice. It's light, and you've got everything you want right there. That's not something I can say for holding mirrorless cameras. It just never feels quite right. Even with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, holding this big wide box it just feels kind of silly, and this feels great. As I was shooting, I was like, man, I wish they made cameras like this. I know there's camcorders now. Maybe I should try one, but it never really took off. Like the whole video feature set went to mirrorless cameras. As you know, if you're, into shooting video, you probably shoot nice video on a mirrorless camera or maybe on a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, but even those cameras are shaped more like mirrorless cameras. We've kind of lost this form factor. Sony was making these cameras. The only thing that I can think of that they make now, I mean, they make digital camcorders. They don't have as attractive of a feature set to me. I mean, I know you can shoot 4K, you can shoot on SD cards, but if you're going to do all that, I feel like maybe make it competitive with the mirrorless cameras, maybe make a large sensor camcorder. And guess what? Sony did that for a while, a long time ago too. If you look up the Sony VG10, 20, and 30, or you look up, I think it's the Sony VG900, something like that, it was a full frame camcorder, interchangeable lens too. In fact, E-mount, you could slap modern Sony lenses, which I still have because I used to shoot on Sony. You can attach those lenses to this interchangeable lens camcorder, and they kind of just stopped making it. So you can buy the little 4K digital camcorders now, but nothing that kind of branched off in the direction of the mirrorless cameras quite like Sony did for a quick minute. Now the only thing you can get is like a $6,000 FX6, which is a full frame camcorder, but cinema camera. But for a minute, and on eBay to this day, you can find these larger sensor interchangeable lens camcorders that Sony made. Definitely look into them, check them out. It's crazy that they existed because they just stopped existing, and camcorders were one thing and mirrorless cameras were another. And that's wild to me, especially after using this camcorder from 2005. I felt like, wow, like they were onto something. And Panasonic, you could see even back then, Panasonic was always rich with the feature set. Even up until a couple years ago, Panasonic had the higher bit rates and the more cinematic choices on their menu for 10-bit and color science and all that. And Sony was playing catch up. Sony was more on the autofocus and lenses and all that stuff. So there's always this back and forth with everything. But even back then, Panasonic had the cinematic mode and all these ideas that were in these little cameras. And it just always bummed me out that they didn't further develop the camcorder. And I'm not fully sure why. I guess the mirrorless phase hit and people go with the mirrorless cameras, but Sony almost did it. They had these large sensor, interchangeable lens cameras in the camcorder form factor. And after using a camcorder, having not used one for years and years and years, boy, this was a fun experience. I wish some of the footage would have come out. It did not because of the tape. I do think it's just really cool to use these old cameras, and there's definitely a place for it, right? If you need something that looks like maybe security camera footage or something that looks like old footage. Maybe you're making a movie or you're making some B-roll and you want it to look like old footage, even though you're shooting it now. Obviously, if you shoot on tape and shoot on an old camera, you can kind of get that vintage look without applying filters and Instagram-y type stuff. You can get that authentic look with these old cameras. And that's cool. And, it makes me want to buy some more old camcorders and just shoot them for fun. But also, I wish some of these companies would make a modern interchangeable lens, large format camcorder. Now, this one's a Panasonic. I know Panasonic has kind of this mid-range camcorder. It's actually Netflix approved. I don't know of anyone that shoots on one, but it's this mid-range interchangeable lens camcorder called the Panasonic EVA1. I believe that's the one I'm thinking of. And it's almost one of those things. It's still rather expensive. You can find them on eBay for a few $1,000s. And you've got the box cameras, kind of like the Panasonic BG-H1. But after using a camcorder, again, just a good old-fashioned camcorder, it made me want to shoot on a camcorder, but have the benefits of modern mirrorless cameras. And that, unfortunately, kind of leaves you in no man's land. So leave your comments, ideas below. Maybe you know of a camera that's fun. I do know of someone who shoots some jiu-jitsu content on a Panasonic X1500, I think. again, really cool camera, high bit rates, looks really nice. I'd love to try one. Modern, has 2 SD cards, but is a small chip. I think it's a 1-inch sensor. So there's kind of this untapped middle ground. And after using a camcorder again, I would love to have kind of a mid-range, even APS-C size sensor, mirrorless camera, guts in a camcorder. Very cool stuff, but a blast of nostalgia today. Leave your thoughts, comments, questions below. As always, I love hanging out. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll talk to you real soon. I'll see ya.